Organized by the British Council for both Spain and Portugal. Today, we will be focusing on a crucial topic for anyone aspiring to study in the United Kingdom: how to write an effective personal statement for university applications, with a special remark on effective, because we have to be practical when talking about this. The personal statement is a crucial component of the application process, offering applicants a unique opportunity to demonstrate their skills, aspirations, and suitability for the chosen courses. Writing an effective personal statement, however, requires careful thought, strategy, and an understanding of what admissions officers are looking for. It is your chance to stand out, showcase who you are, your passions, and to shine beyond your grades, and how your experience make you the ideal candidate. We understand that facing a blank page can be daunting, but please don't worry, we are here to help you overcome this challenge. In this session, we will cover what universities look for in a personal statement, practical tips for structuring it and making impactful, and common mistakes to avoid. In short, this is the opportunity to shine beyond grades and share unique stories with the universities you're interested in. To help us clarify this issue today and give us valuable advice and tips on what to do and what not to do, we have two specialists with us today. Both are professionals with extensive experience in dealing with personal statements, and it is this valuable experience that they will share with us today, with the practical approach that we always look for in our webinars at the British Council, what have advised us to count on them. First, Amy Vincent from IEC, or International Educational Consultants. They every year advise nearly 300 students in both Spain and Portugal to find the university that best fits their academic and personal profile. Furthermore, they are the official representatives from more than 60 British universities of recognized prestige, with which they maintain excellent relationships and active collaboration. Second, but not less important, we also have Sue Garrett with us. Sue is a student recruitment manager at the University of Bath. She has worked in UK higher education for over 30 years, advising students, parents, and teachers from across the globe and in the UK as well. At Bath University, as part of the international team, Sue leads in Europe and visits Spain regularly. Bath is a triple top 10 UK university known for its beautiful campus with Olympic Sports Training Village and UNESCO World Heritage City in the southwest of England. All Bath students can undertake a year-long professional placement as part of the degree, making them exceptionally employable, something that's obviously really important. Bath is a popular destination for students from Spain, with over 200 Spanish students right now currently studying there. As always in our webinars, at the end of this presentation, we will pass on to our speakers the questions that you send us through the Q&A section. We are really thrilled to guide you through this important step in your academic journey. So without further ado, let's get started. Amy, you can begin your presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Amy, I think I'm going to share the slides, but it's nice for us to say hello on screen. I think we're all on screen now, is that right?
Perfect.
Yes. Thank you, Joaquin.
Thank you for the introduction. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I've worked with Amy for some time in Spain and Portugal, and just to say we also have an increasing interest in study in the UK from students in Portugal, and love to visit Portugal as well. So we're delighted so many of you have joined us, and really hope that you will leave feeling much more confident about your personal statement. So I'm going to try and share some slides. While I'm messing with that, Amy, there might be something you want to add as introduction, but let me just find my first slides for everyone to see, and hopefully I'll get the
I will
thumbs
turn
up
my
to
camera
say.
off right now so that everyone can see your presentation better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy, can you see my slides as well?
Yeah, I think it's all working now. Perfect. Thank you, Sue.
Just to say on the first slide, there is a QR code. The reason I put that on there for University of Bath is just in case any of you want specific information about my university. You can register for that. It's entirely up to you. It's not required for this personal statement session, which is obviously general and open to you wherever you want to apply in the UK. But of course, I am from University of Bath and may use some examples of that and obviously some pictures as you're seeing on this first slide. But Amy and I are going to do this together because we do have quite different roles, and Amy obviously advises students all across Spain and Portugal applying to all UK universities, whereas my experience is largely currently at Bath. I have worked at London School of Economics in the past as well, and other universities, and worked with other colleagues. So I'm familiar with the whole UK landscape, but much more so Bath specific courses. So hopefully between us, we can really help you. Okay, so without further ado, let's get on with the presentation, and do start putting your questions in the chat if you'd like to do so. We'll come to those at the end of the slides if that's okay. Hopefully we'll answer many of your questions as we go through.
Sorry for interrupting you, Sue, but it's not the chat what they have to use. They need to ask any question. It's the Q&A section, because there are two sections for this. Is the Q&A, please.
Q&A.
Okay, sure. Absolutely. Perfect.
Perfect. So I think what we're going to cover today, we're going to look at, so the main point of this webinar is the personal statement, but the personal statement comes as part of your UCAS application. So we are going to give a quick overview of a little bit of the whole process and where the personal statement fits into your university application, just to give us some context on what is the personal statement, then some advice about what to include, how to stand out, formatting, everything to the personal statement.
Absolutely. Because the personal statement is part of the larger application that generally for UK universities must go through UCAS. There may be one or two courses out there that you don't use UCAS, but for the majority of UK degrees, you will need to apply online through UCAS. You probably already know this, but it's just a quick reminder that this allows you to apply for up to 5 different courses. This could be across 5 different universities or a smaller number of universities, but a total of 5 courses if you had your sights particularly on one university. One of my daughters applied just to 4 courses from Edinburgh because she knew she wanted only to go to Edinburgh. That is your choice, but obviously the benefit of a UCAS 5-choice application means that you really can spread your choices across different universities, and it gives you the timeline gives you time to do some research as you go along to decide on those once offers start coming back from those universities, so you can really fine-tune your final choice about where you want to go. But the thing about the 5 universities is currently the UCAS form allows you only to submit one personal statement to all of us. So when it comes to Bath, your application will have your personal statement, and it will appear in exactly the same way as it did for every other university in your 5 that you chose. We don't see where else you have applied. We only see the application as it has come to us. So you would not start your application addressing a particular university generally, and you are trying to make it applicable to all of the courses that you're applying for as far as possible. But we'll talk a bit more about that as we go through. Is there anything you want to add to that at this stage, Amy?
No, I think what I was just going to highlight is what you said, that it's very important to bear in mind that you just have one personal statement for your 5 choices. So when we will come back to it as well, but when you're picking which courses you want to apply to, you want to make sure that they all have something in common so that the personal statement is applicable to all 5 options. This would usually mean maybe choosing the same courses, but sometimes you can have some variations as long as you're not kind of, as long as you're making sure that everything in your personal statement is relevant to what you're applying to.
Absolutely. And of course, there are a few exceptions like medicine, which will limit you to 4 medicine choices, and the 5th one has to be something else. So at Bath, for instance, if a student wanted to apply for biochemistry with us because we don't do medicine, that's absolutely fine. We will see their UCAS application with a personal statement, which is clearly directed at medicine. But in our case, we'll be very happy for a second personal statement to be sent to us at that point directly to the university. But that's something you would check university by university in that situation. But otherwise, you really are just relying on that one personal statement for all of those choices. It's not the only part of the application process. Sorry, Amy.
No, don't worry.
Just to give you that overview again in more detail of what the UCAS application actually encompasses, there's quite a few things that we're going to be looking at as universities.
Yeah, so when a university receives your application, the personal statement is part of everything that they're reviewing. Universities are also going to look at your prior academic performance, so how you've done in your previous years of studies, as well as your predicted grades. What are you expected to get in the best case scenario? What grades could you expect to achieve? As well as the content of your personal statement and the reference from your school or college. I would say these are sort of the 4 most important things that universities are looking at. But then also in some cases, universities might have an interview process. They may also be looking at contextual data, mitigating circumstances, which are situations that or if something has happened to you in your life, if you've been in some kind of situation that might have affected your academic performance, that can usually be mentioned in the reference, and universities will take that into account. And also universities sometimes also rely on admissions or aptitudes tests, but just like with the prior academic performance, the predicted grades, the personal statement, they're not the only deciding factor. It will just form part of the process.
Yes, and just to add to that, to explain really the difference between contextual data and mitigating circumstances, the best way to explain it is contextual data generally relates to your educational setting and experience. So the school that you're in, what the academic profile offered there allows you to do. So for instance, if we have specific requirements of subjects or grades or particular subjects that your school or college does not offer, then it might be relevant for us to consider your application in a different way and look for the skills that we want in a different way. So it could be a particular kind of maths that we say we prefer that your school doesn't offer, as an example. So that would be a contextual issue that the school will verify in the reference, so that we know that that shouldn't give you a disadvantage in your application. Now, mitigating circumstances tend to be more personal, so that's normally if something has happened that has affected you directly, personally, possibly if you've had a period of illness or something like that, or a bereavement, and that has affected your educational outcomes. We don't want to disadvantage you. We want to give you the best opportunity to meet our entry requirements, to submit the best application, and to take into account results that may be impacted by something that's beyond your control. Now, I would say we don't double count that. So what I mean by that is if you've already reported some personal circumstances to the exam board for your A-levels or IB or whichever qualifications you're taking, they will have taken that into account in how they have graded you. So in that case, we may not be able to take it into account again later on at the results stage. So it's something to bear in mind. Obviously, we hope that doesn't affect you, but sometimes students have circumstances which do disrupt your achievement, and we'd hate that to stop you getting to the university that you want. So you've seen all the things that included on that UCAS form. And obviously this session is about the personal statement. So that's where we're going to go next in terms of the detail of what you should think about to write that personal statement. But just bear in mind that that reference at the school or college can offer so much more space to write about things that they may be able to verify. So as you'll hear from Amy and I, you can't always fit in everything you want on a personal statement. So remember that your school or college can do a reference for you and might actually be able to add some things that you haven't been able to fit in on your personal statement about extracurricular achievements and that sort of thing. Don't forget that personal statement on its own is probably not going to be the deciding factor in whether we make you an offer. If you're coming to Bath for mechanical engineering and you don't have the required maths and physics, no personal statement in the world will change that in terms of making you an offer, I'm afraid. We're looking at all of these things together holistically, but obviously we want you to have the right academic preparation so that you can actually exceed on the course, so you can excel and enjoy the course, and you've chosen the right course. Okay, so what is a personal statement? Well, first of all, it's a very short piece of writing. It's only about 47 lines, so much shorter than most of the things that you will have to do for your assessment within your current qualifications. And I would say probably much easier, particularly if you listen to all our tips today. It is limited, and it does mean, therefore, you're probably going to start off with a draft which is much longer than that and really hone that down. I know you help students in that process, don't you, Amy? Wouldn't you say that's the approach?
Yes, that's the greatest piece of advice that I give is sometimes the fact that it's so much shorter can feel almost more overwhelming at the beginning. Because you're thinking, well, I've got all of these things that I want to say about myself, and I'm so interested in this course. I really want to show that I am, and then I've only got 4,000 characters. What I would say is at the beginning, when you're writing your first drafts, you're not going to write it all in one go and be done. I'd say usually it takes around 5-6 drafts to end up with the final version. And when you're on those beginning drafts, don't worry about the character count to start with. I would really just start by trying to get all of your ideas on paper and then later trying to cut it down. Also, because maybe if you're very focused on the limit, it might be that there's things that you want to mention, but you feel like they're less important, so you leave them out, when it can turn out to be those things which are the most important, and we wouldn't want you to miss out anything just because of the character limit.
That's really good advice. And I notice when I've helped students at personal statement workshops during my career that I quite often move around sections of their drafts, and at something that a student didn't think was relevant, I would put in the first paragraph. But that's because I have that experience of having seen them as Amy does. So yes, starting with a longer draft is not a problem at all. You're probably going to cut it down. And even if there are things that you've achieved that are not relevant for your personal statement, it doesn't mean to say they won't be useful in the future, potentially for when you're applying for jobs and so on. There are lots of achievements you can be very proud of that possibly won't be right for a personal statement. And that's what makes a UK personal statement quite different from, for instance, when you apply to the US system, where in North America you write a much longer statement, which might bring in far more extracurriculars than we generally want to see in a UK personal statement. So that's why this next point is really important for you. In the UK, what we want you to do on that personal statement is place all of your focus on relevant skills, relevant achievements, academic or otherwise. And if work experience is relevant, yes, we want to hear about that. But relevance is really the most important word here, because that's what we're looking for. And it may be that some universities will literally be marking a personal statement for specific relevant things in there. So even if you are fantastic at the violin, or you've achieved incredibly in sports, unless you can make it relevant to a personal statement for natural sciences, and you might be able to, then it may not sit well in a personal statement for a UCAS application. Lovely to have those skills, but think about what's relevant for the course that you're applying for. Now at Bath, we know that it's very important to look at a personal statement to decide if a student is suitable for the course they're applying for. And in some cases, like our architecture course, very popular course, we don't look at a portfolio. And the personal statement is really the only place we can hear about how a student thinks about architecture, because architecture as a subject is generally not actually represented in any qualification group at school. So it's the first time we're going to be able to hear about why you might want to study architecture, what study you have had that's prepared you for that. So we have 2 members of staff at our university reading every UCAS application and every personal statement to make sure that we aren't missing anything that's very important for your application, particularly where it is a competitive course like our architecture course, for instance. Now, that's not always the same at every university. And of course, you're very welcome to check with your universities of choice to see how much emphasis they put on the personal statement. Is it very important? Is it less important because they're going to interview you? Is it less important because they're going to look at perhaps prior academic achievement far more? There are many different ways that universities assess applications to make offers to you to study with us. I would say the majority of us do take the personal statements very seriously, and certainly at my university, that's always been the case. Is that your experience, Amy? Have you had feedback on that?
Yes, it is. It is generally regarded as a very important part of the process. There are some universities and some courses that do place less importance on it. But when you're applying through UCAS, like you were saying before, it's unlikely that you're going to apply just to one university or to one course. So within the 5 that you're choosing, probably at least 4 of them are putting a great importance on the personal statement. So I would always consider it to be one of the most important factors, even though, like you were saying before, maybe with engineering, if you don't have the 7 in maths or the 6 or the 10 in the bachillerato, if you don't have the specific academic requirements, the personal statement can't get you there. But I do think it's important to always view it as an important factor. Just because I'm doing something quantitative, that means my personal statement is less important. That isn't the case, because if you have the grades and you're in competition with everyone else who also has the grades, then there needs to be something else to help become the deciding factor. So, and they are taken very seriously.
Absolutely right. Yes, absolutely right. And that's
so yes,
why it could be the difference between a yes and no at the offer stage. It could be the difference between us confirming your place. So when your results come out, if you've met your offer, obviously you're guaranteed a place with us. If you've gone through the process, accepted our offer, then that conditional offer that we've asked you for certain grades, once you've achieved those, you are guaranteed your place. However, every year we also take many students who slightly miss their grades, because it's a bit of a numbers game for university. We make more offers than we have places. We make offers on potential in terms of grades, and the offer is conditional. So we may say we want you to have 3 6s in your IB higher levels in certain subjects, and maybe you don't quite get those 3 6s. But if you've done a great personal statement, we will go back to that and we will look at it at that stage. And yes, we have a few places left to fill at results day, because you've had some choices to make about where you want to study, and we can never quite predict how many people are going to come to us. So we do look at that personal statement right at the start of the application process when we decide whether or not to make you an offer to study with us. And then again, obviously, if at results day something is not quite as we ideally want to see in your grades, we may overlook that if we go back to that personal statement and remind ourselves why we made you that offer and how your potential plays out in that personal statement.
And I think that's true for all UK universities. That's not just Bath. That is something we've heard from other colleagues as well at other institutions, that if you don't quite make the grade on results day, but there's still places to fill and you still have the required subjects, then it can be used in a near miss situation. So very important to get it right.
Exactly. So we're going to go into a bit more detail about what you actually need to do it with your personal statement. But some of you may be aware that there have been some changes already proposed by UCAS about four personal statements and how they will be required on the UCAS form between 2025. So if you're applying now for entry in 2025, you are applying with the old style personal statement, let's call it. But from 2026, this has been changed a little bit. So Amy, I haven't seen any 2026 applicants yet or applications, but I know you're already advising them. Do you want to talk through this a bit?
Sure, thanks, Sue. So yes, as is written here, historically, up until this year, the personal statement has been a free-form piece of text, 4,000 characters, 47 lines, in which kind of follows the structure of an introduction, your relevant academic experience, then your relevant experience maybe outside of the classroom, super and extracurricular activities you've done, transferable skills, and then a conclusion, much like a normal essay structure. But I think a lot of students were finding that structure overwhelming. They weren't really sure where to start with that. So UCAS for the past couple of years have been holding focus groups and control groups, speaking with students, with universities, school counselors, to try and find a more effective way to do it that works well for everyone. So the plan for UCAS for making this into 3 sections was to, first of all, make it easier for you, so you know where to start better, responding to 3 questions rather than being given a blank piece of paper. And then also to help, I think, universities as well, to help admissions a bit. If they're looking for something really specific, like Sue was saying earlier, some universities almost kind of mark the personal statement, right? They're looking for something specific. By having these 3 questions, that should hopefully help admissions, as well as, more importantly, helping you. Regarding the content, though, everything is still quite similar. What universities are looking to see is still your motivation for the subject, anything relevant that you've done. Everything still needs to still have relevance. It's just to help you organize your ideas a little bit more. So the 3 questions will be: why do you want to study this course or subject? How have your qualifications and studies helped you prepare for this subject? And what else have you done to prepare outside of education? Why are these experiences useful? So the first question can be kind of like what you would put in the introduction, maybe in the old style, is your motivations, what knowledge you already have on the subject, your future career plans. If you don't know, it's okay. I feel like this is something I say a lot too. It's okay if you don't know 100%, what job you want to do in the future. You can still be motivated to study a subject without being 100% sure. But if you do have an idea of what career path you want to take, it is a good idea to include that, because it's sort of, how can this course help you to get there? It could be, I don't know, maybe you read a book and that book made you want to study this subject. So the questions are still quite broad. And then in question 2, when it's talking about your qualifications, it doesn't necessarily have to be it's qualifications and studies. They've again kept it quite broad. So this could be within school. So which subjects are you taking in school this year? But it could also be a short course you've done, an online course, maybe a summer course, but something academic that you've done related to your subject. And then in section 3, it's more anything outside of education. And why are these experiences useful? So again, we're looking for the relevance here. So not necessarily like Sue was saying earlier, that you play the violin, unless you're giving us a why. So explain why you're including something and what you've learned from it, not just telling us something. I think something really important to highlight, though, is don't overthink too much about which section the information goes in, because there are some things that could work in either section. For example, maybe you want to study psychology because you have a grandparent with Alzheimer's, for example. That could be a starting point of, why do you want to study this subject? I want to learn more about it. However, that could also come into section 3 of something you've done outside of education, maybe helping care for that person. So the most important thing is the information is in there, so don't worry too much, but don't repeat it. So don't write it in section 1 and in section 3, just choose where it best fits. Maybe you have more motivations of why you want to study this subject, so you want to put it in section 3 to have a balance of answers. There's it's still 4,000 character limit. with a minimum of 350 characters per each section. But apart from that, there's no, I would say aim to have them all kind of equally. But if you've done more academic qualifications than things outside of your studies, then that's okay. If your section 2 is a bit longer than your section 3, it's no problem at all. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. So looking for, I think universities are still looking for the same information, just organized in a different way.
I would agree, and it's really helpful to hear you say that, because we don't know what it's going to look like. We think it will help us or help my admissions colleague who are having to read many, many personal statements about over 30,000 applications for around 4,000 places at Bath each year. Now, we've always in the past encouraged students applying up to now and for 2025 to make sure that a personal statement is split into paragraphs and is organized in a way that makes it easy for us to pick out the things that are relevant. But obviously this new system will guide you a little bit more on that. But then, as Amy has said, you may have to be a bit smart about where you put things. If you feel you have a lot more experience that's work related, for instance, because you're applying for business or architecture, and you don't just want to put that in section 3, you can still put it in section 1. It's all still relevant if you talk about it in the right way. So I guess it's being a bit clever with that new structure if each section is limited in terms of the word count, and just making sure that everything that's priority, that focuses on the right things that we'll talk about more in a moment for your course, is still in there, and you don't have to lose something relevant. So really the same principle, make it relevant and give examples, definitely give some examples to back up everything you're putting in there as well.
I think one thing I would just, sorry, Sue.
No, carry on.
I think one thing that I would just add, because maybe we haven't said it yet, is making sure not to repeat information that's already in the UCAS form, right?
Yes.
So when it's saying giving academic examples, maybe that you have a 10 in maths, admissions is already going to see that from your UCAS personal statement form. So it's better to maybe go into an example of something you've enjoyed from your mathematics syllabus and expand on it that way, rather than just talking about your grades, which they will already see in UCAS.
Exactly. Yes, very important not to waste that word count with repetition. Relevant, just thinking of relevance, remembering that you are addressing a particular course, not just writing a CV. So our tips here on this slide: 80% academic and 20% extracurricular. You'll hear that a lot from universities, and I'm not saying it's the only way to go. You've just heard that we've now got a new structure where it's going to be directed in different ways anyway. But I think you could almost say everything should be 100% academic, in the sense that it should be 100% focused on the academic course of study that you are applying for. And when I say academic, it doesn't mean just talking about what you're currently studying for A-levels or IB or your national qualification. It's really thinking yourself ahead into the academic course of study, the degree that you're looking to apply for. So it's relevance to the course that you're applying for. That's what we really, really want to see. And I think we've already said it's going to take several attempts to write that and make it as clear as possible, so we can pick up what you really, really are trying to tell us. So I think there are a couple of tips that I would give at this stage. One is, imagine you are being interviewed. Why do you want to study this subject, and what makes you the right person for the course? Literally out loud, you might want to just say to yourself why you want to study it. But another way to help with that might be when you're doing your research to choose a course and noting down some of the aspects of that course that appealed to you. What was it that made you decide that you would rather study biochemistry than study just chemistry, for instance, or some things that are quite specific to why you have chosen a particular course? What is it about that course that excited you, made you think it's the right course for you? for 2, 3, 4 years. It may be because it's a vocational course, and that's fine because you want to train in a particular job role or discipline, or it may be just for the academic love of study. And there's no wrong answer as long as you can convince us. Would you agree, Amy?
Yeah, I would completely agree. I would completely agree. And I think that's also really a good place to start. It kind of ties back in with what I was saying earlier about, not being overwhelmed by the character limit and the word count. Don't start by thinking of that. Start by thinking with this question, and imagine you're being interviewed. If you were to start talking about it, where would you go with that? And then that can sort of help lead into a bit of research you might want to do about the course and other activities related to it to help strengthen the personal statement. But definitely, yeah, what makes you the right person for the course?
So we've talked a little bit about the new structure and the old structure, and obviously the concluding statement is possibly got to be wrapped up in that final section under the new structure, as Amy's already said in a minute ago. But one thing I was going to say is that we've not really talked about how you evidence what you put in your personal statement. We haven't really talked yet in detail about examples. And this is one of the things that I think is very important, particularly with the use of AI in helping write a personal statement. Particularly when you first start writing a personal statement and thinking about, as we've just said, why do you want to study the course, pretending you're being interviewed, it's actually quite hard then to focus in straight away on individual examples. But we love to see individual examples that really demonstrate to us that you have a genuine personal interest in that subject area. So you've read a particular academic paper on one of the websites of the universities you're applying for. You've been to an academic summer school that really focused in on a particular niche area of your subject. It doesn't matter that it might be quite niche. We know you're going to be studying many, many things over your 3 or 4 or 5 years with us, but giving us some examples of an aspect of that study or experience that really excite you, that really is going to help your personal statement stand out. So really, why does the subject interest you has to have some examples to show that you have really got enough interest to study a course, which typically in the UK is more or less a single subject, unless you're doing a combined degree for at least 3 years. And we do want to hear about your current academic study. We don't want it listed. As Amy said, we don't want to see things that are just listed in the qualification section, relisted in your personal statement. But we do want to hear about how your current study has inspired you to take a leap into degree study, if that is the case. So maybe you just loved your chemistry A-level so much you want to study chemistry for a whole 3 years. Absolutely fine to talk to us about the content of your current study and aspects of it that have inspired you to take that course, that subject more in depth at degree level. Skills are more difficult to define, but there are so many skills that can come into play depending on the kind of subject you're applying for. And business is always one, I think, that is an interesting area. Business and management. There's so many different courses in business and management and marketing. There's such a changing set of skills that you need to work in business, as we know, because it's a live discipline that is changing all of the time in terms of how you're actually going to make your way in the world, working for an organization, managing a team, or developing a strategy or marketing campaign. So you have to have some current ideas. So one of the things about skills is remember that they need to be current or forward-looking rather than things that may sound like something that's useful because you've had work experience a couple of years ago. You feel you should put it in a business application. Only if you can make it really relevant for now, only if it really gave you specific skills that you can evidence. Would you agree with that, Amy?
I completely agree. I completely agree with that. that making sure, that you don't just put something in it for the sake of it. And I think with what you were saying about chemistry as well, not just with the business example, but it's not just saying, oh, I want to study a chemistry degree because I'm good at chemistry because I've done it for A level. They're going to see that you've done it for A level. It's getting those really specific details and showing that interest rather than just saying like that I have an interest. And making sure I like what you said about current or forward thinking, that things that you genuinely believe are going to be useful, not just putting something in for the sake of it because you've read it somewhere or you've seen it somewhere. Completely agree with that.
Good, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of students go through this. So academic interests obviously can be lots of different things. We've talked about some examples here, but there are going to be examples that are relevant to your subject. So current affairs, for instance, are you applying for a course in international relations or politics? It's absolutely critical that you are doing some reading about current affairs, that you're not just relying on what you're studying on your curriculum in that situation, and have some ideas. We really do want you to have some ideas. So you may have been involved in a United Nations, mock United Nations debate. That is something we see in a lot of personal statements, I have to say, for politics applications. It's not wrong. It's not a bad thing. It's not a thing that you shouldn't include, but you do need to make sure you reflect on it and talk about the ideas or interests that inspired in you, not just listing that you've done it. So there are lots of ways to bring in skills and experience, but remember that you could be writing about skills or experiences that quite a lot of other applicants may have too. How are you going to make it interesting? How are you going to make it personal for a personal statement? How are you going to really show us that it's motivated you to study the subject rather than just listing what you've done? Your opinion matters to us. There isn't a right or wrong answer. We're not going to judge you on your opinion. We like to hear your opinion, even if it's a political opinion that whoever's reading it doesn't agree with. It doesn't matter, because we want to see that you are thinking about politics and current affairs, for example, and that you have your own ideas on that and you're happy to be debated on those as well. So think about what you can bring in a personal way to what you relate.
And I think as well that really helps to show universities that you have the critical thinking skills needed to undertake that sort of degree, right? Because I think it can be, you can write in a personal statement, through doing politics A level, I have developed my critical thinking skills. Or if you're giving an example and you're giving your political opinion and you're sort of showing the fors and againsts and actually demonstrating your critical thinking in your personal statement, then that ends up getting both points across, shows your interest, shows your engagement with the subject, and shows your critical thinking skills without having to explicitly say it, right? So I always think it's stronger to show rather than tell within the text.
Absolutely. And some good examples of things that you may already be doing or due to take as part of your current study might be an extended essay within your IB. Obviously, that's personal to you. You've chosen a subject. You're delving into that in detail. We love to hear about your extended essay if you're doing an IB. If you're doing an extended project qualification, very similarly, we're very, very happy to hear about that, because those are areas of academic study that are personal to you. Now, it may be that your qualifications don't offer that kind of experience. That's fine too. There are other ways that you can find them in terms of university summer schools, online courses, extra reading. They're all equally valid. So just having something outside of the curriculum that you're studying will really sit well in a personal statement. So lots of examples of things, even TED Talks or podcasts that you can talk about. any academic projects or competitions that you've done. Again, not just listing them, making sure that you reflect on that experience. We love the fact that you may have signed up for a massive online open course, a MOOC, and completed that, but that's not how we will judge that experience. We want to hear what you've learned from that experience, what interested you about it, how you engaged with it, what you gained from it. Those are the sorts of things that we want to hear you talking about within your personal statement, writing about. So lots of examples there. If you don't know about the website Future Learn, that's where you can go to for free, massive online open courses. Lots of universities offer them. Generally, they're free. They are very clear in terms of telling you what commitment you're making if you sign up for a course. So it might be 3 weeks of 2 hours work for a period of 3 or 4 weeks, something you could easily do in your summer vacation, or it could be much shorter than that. It will talk about the level, but these are delivered free by universities. There is a cost if you want a certificate to prove that you've taken it. We don't need to see that. We just need to know from your personal statement that you've engaged with something outside of your study, enjoyed it, it's motivated you to study that course that you've chosen, and it relates to that. So obviously focus on things that are relevant in that way, but it could just be extra reading, or reading The Economist, or a favorite podcast that's relevant to your subject. All of those things count. It's how you reflect on them. What's been your favorite recent experience of something like that in a personal statement? Amy, can you give some clues?
Let me think. I think one of my favorite experiences isn't actually from a course or an activity that they've done, but one of the favorite things I read was a student who wanted to study management, and thought, oh, but I haven't done anything related to it. I just know that I like it, and I haven't done anything. And what we do, we had some meetings and we were talking with her, but like, where does your interest come from? And maybe you had. And she said, well, I mean, in my friendship group, I'm the planner. I plan everything. At the end of next year, we're going on an end of year trip, and well, I've made an Excel with the prices of every hotel that we're going to, and I've set up all the train times, and I've told everyone, I think maybe it was management and finance as well, I've told everyone they need to send me the money and I'll sort it out, and I'm in charge of the budget, and I've got the schedule ready, and if someone drops out, then this is how much the price is going to change. I was like, well, you know, that can count as well. And I think at the beginning she felt like, oh, I've done nothing relevant. Nobody's going to accept. I can't prove it, but it can come from things like that as well. And then I think I think my favorite example from maybe a TED talk or something was a student that did it very well. He wrote about a very famous podcast, I think, about cryptocurrency. It was for economics. And what he did particularly well, and he got a lot of offers from very top universities, was he didn't actually agree with the content of the podcast. And I feel like it can be difficult to disagree in a constructive way, if that makes sense. But he really explained why it was actually a TED talk or a podcast. Sorry, it was a podcast that he didn't enjoy so much. But he included it because he could explain why he didn't enjoy it, why he disagreed with it, and what his opinions were. And by doing that, he was kind of showing his understanding and his interest in the subject. So I think those are probably my two favorite things I've seen over the past couple of years.
Those are two really perfect examples, because they are actually like a student studying at degree level. So if you are studying management at degree level, you're very likely to have a live project where you are going to have to plan activities, perhaps plan with a business, make a business plan yourself as part of your degree. All of those things are completely relevant, even though they're not academic qualifications. And your student who's argued against the podcast, again, perfect. That's exactly what you're going to be doing in seminars. If you are in a politics seminar, you are going to be debating current affairs. You're going to be debating some of the subjects that you study. Those are the critical skills, thinking skills that we want to see. So absolutely, you don't necessarily have to rely on all of your academic qualifications only. We want to see those, of course we do, and they're already on there, but the personal statement is absolutely the place to bring in those extra things that might be from personal planning like that, or teamwork in sports, or planning a concert or a theatre production. All of those things might sit very well for a management application, wouldn't they? If they're talked about in the right way.
At the beginning, yeah.
Exactly.
I think another fun one actually was a student that that did a MOOC, a biology and chemistry, a MOOC, where I think she was learning about fermentation, and then based on that, she decided to make her own kombucha at home, and but turn it into kind of experiment, changing different ratios of sugar and things like that, and that was quite interesting as well.
Definitely would stand out, which we love.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm conscious we're running out of time in our hour, so I'm going to just whiz on a little bit. I think we've talked about a lot of the things on the slides here anyway, and I think we've strayed into this area of personal skills, transferable skills from extracurricular activities. So really have a think about the things that you've been doing outside of school and how they might relate to the course that you're applying for. If it's not relevant, if you do need to do some extra work, we've talked already about some places you can look for extracurricular activity that we really value, like a MOOC or extra reading. Extra reading's always good. Every course at university is going to involve some reading. There may be some relevant journals, even if you're reading papers or theories that are on our own website. Super helpful to demonstrate that you're engaged with university life in advance before you've even started with us, which is absolutely great. And we talked a little bit about concluding statements, again, slightly different for the new structure. Amy's already mentioned career plans. We love to hear career plans. Nobody's going to hold you to it. It may be that you're studying politics with the intention of becoming a teacher afterwards. Nobody's going to chase you up afterwards and see if you did that. But if that's where you are at the moment, then it certainly demonstrates some motivation to us and really helps us understand why you've chosen a particular course. I think that sentence there saying, what can you offer the university? Don't worry too much about that. Everything we've talked about now is really what you can offer the university. We just want you to be suitable for the course. It really should be more about what the university can offer you in the long term, and hopefully when you get your offers back, you will be the one making the decision about which university can offer you the best course, the best graduate opportunities, the best facilities, the best location, all of that sort of stuff. What we mean when we say what can you offer us, it's really those skills that we've just been talking about. And just remember to evidence them. So we sometimes call this the ABCs, so the activity that you've done, what benefit it gave you, what you gained from that experience, and then how you relate that to the course. So obviously there's a little example on this slide of someone who campaigned for school president and the benefit that gave them in terms of the work and teamwork and the ethos of working with students together, and how that then could be related to applying for politics. It's a very basic example, but the principle is exactly what you should be looking at. Is what you want to talk about on your personal statement something that you can evidence is going to really relate to your course and stand out as something worth talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of like saying always the why of why you're telling us this thing.
Exactly, right? Exactly. Always ask yourself why. Remember your you're talking to someone who potentially loves their subject. And I should say some universities like mine has specialist admission selectors, some personal statements at other universities may go directly to academics who are actually teaching you as well. And any university, even where we have specialist subject selectors, they are advised by the academics who are teaching the course. So that's why they have particular ideas about what they want to hear related to their subject area that they love and they hope you love as well. I think we're on to the last little slide here just about, because we want to see if you have some questions to ask us as well when we've stopped sharing the slides. Just a reminder, don't repeat information. You just don't have the space. Don't just list those achievements and skills. We like to see your grammar okay. We don't mind you using AI, but we just want you to use it in a smart way, not to just write your whole personal statement, because they tend to come out very, very vague. I had a quick look at UCAS and there's very good advice on there actually about when it is appropriate to use AI and when it can trip you up a bit. So you might want to have a look at that as well. And clearly plagiarizing, so copying someone else's work, is absolutely not allowed. UCAS do actually run personal statements through similarity detection software, which will check if you've taken something from a previous personal statement or something that's published online. So again, AI can trip you up in that way, but certainly copying someone else's writing will definitely do that. But in the green, obviously, draft and redraft till you're happy with it. Do make sure you get some external feedback. So people like Amy, perfect position to really give you a perspective, having seen lots of personal statements. But you could equally just talk to your family, read your personal statement out loud. Does it make sense? Is it in the right order? Does it really convince someone that you are ready to study that course? And you all have teachers, counsellors in your schools and colleges who are specialists in this area. So don't forget, they're looking at many of these every year. They are there to help you. They know your work track record. They can help guide you. So use those skills as well. Anything else to add on those statement tips there?
I guess I maybe would add one more don't of trying to avoid some of the commonly used starters in a personal statement, or maybe some slightly cliche things. Like, you kind of want to avoid saying, ever since I was little, I have had a passion for whatever, politics, for example. So but if you are making it original and making it about you, then it's likely that you will be avoiding that. It's kind of okay if your first draft sounds like that, because if it is difficult to get started with writing, and that somehow sometimes feels like the most natural way to begin is like, oh, where should I begin? Well, when I was younger. And it could be that it's true, but I think UCAS published us a statistic that something like 70 or 80% of personal statements included a line that was ever since I was little or since I was younger, things like that. So to make yours really stand out, try not to include that line. That's what I would say.
I love that. That's very, very, very important advice, because it's absolutely true. We see so many personal statements that start in that way. And I totally understand why that is, because this is a pivotal moment when you might say, going from your childhood years into your adult years, studying a degree, maybe moving away from home or even from your country to become an adult and study independently. All the lovely things about growing up and going and studying at a university. But what that means is you perhaps get preoccupied with that transition and think about when you started being interested in a subject area. That chronological approach doesn't really work for a personal statement, because it delays getting to the really relevant stuff, which is very likely to be what you've been doing in the last year or 6 months and what you're thinking of doing in future. So try and be forward looking rather than backward looking, I think, is a good principle that supports what you just said, Amy.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it, Sue.
Okay, so just to say again, don't do this on your own. You've got plenty of help. You've joined us today, so well done for doing that. Thank you for giving up your time to join us. But you can reach out to admissions teams at universities. There's my admissions team email on there. The UCAS website has lots of information. professional experts like Amy and her team or other organisations can really help support you, and your own school and college will really give you the support that you need. It can talk about what should go in the reference or the personal statement. They're going to be seeing your personal statement anyway if they're responsible for pressing the button to send their application to UCAS. So it's a good idea to try and get that to them earlier than that so that they can give you their tips as well. And I think if I stop sharing now, we can go hopefully to any questions that have come in.
Yes, thank you for your great presentation, Sue and Amy. It was really helpful and informative. And we have several questions.
Great.
Some of them have been partially addressed in the presentation, but perhaps it would be a good idea to answer them to clarify any possible doubts. The first one we have is about the personal statement narrative style. Should the personal statement be written as answers to individual questions, or can it be structured as an essay?
So I guess that's in reference to the new version where it's broken into 3 questions, right?
Right.
In the current version, it should be written as prose, as a continuous essay. And in the new version, I would still try and keep some kind of flow to it, but within the individual 3 questions. You have to be answering the question, but I would still aim for short paragraphs rather than bullet points.
Okay. Another question is, do universities check for plagiarism?
So the universities don't need to, because UCAS will already do that as you submit your application. So if it's clearly quite a large amount of text, it's a similarity detection system that they have that will highlight areas that have been taken from another personal statement or something published online. Now, if that's a quote from a book that you're talking about, absolutely fine. It doesn't mean to say straight away we're going to reject an application on that basis, but it's highlighted to us so that we can see if there's a big chunk of text that clearly has been plagiarized. So that's where it gets checked.
Thank you, sir. Is the structure and characteristics of the personal statement in the UK very different from the one in the US?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a short answer, very much.
It's very different from the US. So I think Sue touched on this a little bit earlier, but they're looking for quite different things. In the US, you're more trying to you apply directly to the university. You have a common app essay, but then you have individual ones for each university, and it's a lot more personal. Even though the UK calls it the personal statement, in the US it's a lot more about your personal qualities, your volunteer work. It doesn't necessarily have to be too much to do with the subject at all. It's a lot more maybe talk about a challenge that you've overcome, because they're looking for your personal qualities that will make you a good fit for the college. In the UK, it's a lot more about making sure that you've chosen the right degree course for you, that you have the academic interest, which is also partially due to the fact that the degrees tend to be shorter in the United Kingdom, and in the US you don't specialize from straight away from the beginning, whereas in the UK you do. So kind of looking for different things and written in a different style.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to use part of a US application or much of a US application for a UK application, because the other reason is that in the US courses tend to be quite general. They're not subject specific in quite the way that UK universities tend to offer their courses. So it's partly to do with the way we offer courses, as well as the things that US universities look for and choose students and scholars based on, as compared to the UK, where a UCAS personal statement, a UCAS application is purely used to determine whether we offer an academic course of study to a student.
Okay, great. Another question we have is, how can I tailor my personal statement if I am applying to multiple courses that are similar but have slightly different focuses at different universities?
You can definitely do this. You can definitely do this. It really depends how different. And I think part of your research in choosing courses, as you go through that journey, you'll probably focus more in on courses that have some similarities. So I suspect it would be unlikely that a student would be applying for chemistry and applying for history. It's possible that there are combined courses that offer those two things together. We certainly don't at Bath. We don't offer history at all, actually. So it might be a question of choosing differently in terms of the courses you're looking for, or you're going to focus your personal statement primarily to your top choices out of those 5. So if the courses do have different titles, but there is a commonality of content, as there are in many management courses, then, for instance, if you're looking at a course that's business and economics at one university, and you're looking at one that's just called accounting and business in another, there's going to be some common threads there. You're not naming the courses within the personal statement, but there will be some common threads that will be relevant to both of those things. So it really depends how different they are, but you've got plenty of space to really address key points within a range of courses, I would say.
Very helpful. Thank you, Sue. And the next and also last, I think, question we have is, what advice would you have for making my personal statement stand out if I don't have much extracurricular experience related to my chosen course?
So really, I think some of the things that we were talking about are not difficult to gain. So if you watch a TED Talk, or you listen to a relevant podcast, or you just read on the university website some of the current research that's going on in the department that you're applying for, that's enough for you to have some thoughts and opinions. You can call that extracurricular. It isn't a huge time commitment to do that, but it will certainly help you if you have nothing but your qualifications. We recognize that some qualifications take a lot of your time. So we know you won't have a lot of time maybe at this stage to get intensive work experience. It's not about the amount of time you have spent on work experience or whatever it happens to be extracurricular. It is about how you reflect on that and what thoughts you have. So it could literally just be listening to an online lecture from one of the subjects that you're interested in, and really having some positive thoughts about that, some ideas about that, make a good paragraph. That's still relevant for us even without extracurricular activities, unless we're specifying them. So I know for architecture, for us at Bath, for instance, we do say quite clearly that we would prefer to see some students with some project experience, work experience. We give lots of choices, and that's another good tip. I mean, we're not prescribing extracurricular things for most courses, but we will give you ideas by course entry requirements, what kind of things would be helpful to talk about on your personal statement. We're not trying to keep it a secret what we're looking for. We're trying to help you make an application in the most effective way.
Okay. Well, it seems that we have no more questions, and therefore we will conclude today's session. We thank our 2 guests for their great presentation, which we hope has been interesting and, above all, useful to you. And to all of you who have been there with us today, thank you very much too. We hope to have you with us again in our next webinar. Good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you so much for joining. Good luck with your applications. You'll be great.
Thank you very much.